Everybody, welcome back. I am happy today to be joined by former Maricopa County Recorder, who is running as a Democrat for the Secretary of State in Arizona. Please welcome Adrian Fontes. Adrian, hi again.
Hey, Allison, thanks for having me back.
I'm so glad to have you back because I wanted to get an update from the last time we talked and about, I grew up in Arizona. Arizona is very special and very important to me. My parents live there. I'm very concerned about what's going on in that state. And I want to talk about how important it's going to be to maintain a Democratic Secretary of State, but also what's been going on with what I've been calling the Crazy Times Carnival Fraudit, the cyber ninjas, Logan and the CEO of Overstock. I mean, it's just a circus. And it was no accident that there was an actual circus in the parking lot while that was happening. But they're about to release their quote unquote findings. And we've heard numbers thrown around by the former guy and some Republicans there in the legislature. But can you talk to us about bring us back up to speed with where we're at and when this was supposed to come out and when it's going to come out?
Well, first of all, again, thank you for having me. And secondly, let me start by saying that I think folks around the entire country ought to be concerned with this, not unlike you are. And here's why. We've seen efforts to try to get this sort of a thing moving forward in a lot of other states. And a lot of other extreme seditionist legislators are trying to figure out ways to make this happen. They're using this, they're calling this the Arizona model or something like that. So this is important nationally. It's not just an Arizona issue. Our democracy is under a full-fledged attack. They're at the walls looking for weaknesses. And that's one of the reasons why I'm running for Secretary of State. But insofar as this exercise itself, I won't call it an audit. I like your Crazy Times Carnival imagery there because they were doing it at Veterans Memorial Coliseum, which is where we hold the state fair. And it used to be called the Madhouse on McDowell, where the Phoenix Suns used to play, if you remember back in the old days. In any event,
I do.
Yeah, they were supposed to have this thing finished in May. There was delay. And then that's because they don't know what they're doing. I mean, it really is that simple. They are not auditors. They never had a plan. They never had any sort of neutrality or sort of arm's length away from any of what was going on. And I think your listeners are pretty well informed on that. So I won't get too much into the details on those things. But at the end of the day, this is grift par excellence. I don't know any other way that we've ever seen American politics used and the democratic system itself, the electoral system itself, used to make people private money, to make themselves rich after an election. Now, we've seen a lot of political consultants on the front side, and there's always a little scandal here and there about too many people making too much money on politics, but we've never seen it after an election. We've never seen it as an attack against our own democracy where people are making private money. And believe you me, people are making a lot of money on this. Even some of the folks who were quote unquote floor monitors, some of the public papers that have been made public revealed, the folks who were walking around making sure the volunteers did their job right, they were getting paid $100 an hour to do that. And if you think that's not, if you don't think that's a big deal, then think about what Doug Logan himself is probably pocketing while he's tooting around on his private jet. And, oh, by the way, now refusing to turn over any of the documents that he's already been ordered by the court to turn over regarding any discussions of payment, their subcontractors, and things of this nature as well. So they're delaying because they're making money off of it. The Republicans who are running for various offices in Arizona are making money off of this. This is a money-making scam at the expense of our democracy, and it's weakening the republic. That's what this is about. Their intention is to weaken the processes that they believe are going to hurt them because they are neo-authoritarians and they don't want the people to decide. And that is anti-American. So I don't know if I answered your question, but you're asking about stuff that's a little personal to me here. So I get a little excited when I talk about this issue.
Well, I do too, as a fellow veteran. because, we signed up to protect this right, the right to vote, and the right to vote freely. So it becomes very personal. And it's personal to all Americans too, though, not just veterans.
No, and without a question. I mean, and the other aspect for me is, when I was the county recorder, I created the system. I'm the chief architect of what they're auditing. The new tabulation system, the electronic adjudication, the actual ballots themselves. This was my election. And so for, as a veteran, yeah, I'm offended by it. But these guys are clowning around with the folks that I hired, the volunteers that we coordinated, the people that we supported through our leadership infrastructure to make the election happen, Republicans and Democrats alike. And so it's hard to watch something that was so good, so successful, with such high turnout and with such a quick tabulation at the end. It's hard to watch it every day get attacked by folks who are lying, literally lying about what is happening right now.
Yeah, and lying to make money. As you said, you think that this delay, I think results were due out in May, and then they were due out again, and then somebody got COVID, and nobody can answer any questions. I think it's coming out in a couple of, or maybe September 24th. I can't remember the date. You can correct me on that. But my concern, or what I'm wondering is, if they're delaying to continue the grift, do you think that they'll fabricate findings to be able to continue that grift, or do they know that when they present that it's pretty much over?
Oh, no, they'll continue to fabricate. I mean, look, the Senate president just a day and a half ago entered into an agreement with the County Board of Supervisors regarding the subpoenas on some routers. Okay, that was in the news a lot. We want the routers. Donald Trump was yelling about, we want the routers. And the agreement that they entered said that a special master would be appointed who could hire some technologists, and that the Cyber Ninja / quote unquote audit team could ask the special master for information off of the routers. And if those folks determined that there were no security issues or that it was relevant stuff, then that information would come back to the Cyber Ninjas. The Cyber Ninjas were not getting the routers. It's in black and white in the statement, in the settlement agreement itself. But these folks are so willing to lie that the Senate president herself, Wendy Rogers herself, another one of these folks, they tweeted out, "We got the routers." They tweeted out, "We got the routers." That's their language. They didn't get the routers.
Wouldn't it be better to say, "We didn't get the routers, they kept them from us"? That's fishy. I mean, not to give them ideas or anything, but
I mean, in a way, but think about it. If you're selling a lie, you've got to have a victory. You've got to have a victory in there somewhere. Mm-hmm. So they say, "We got the routers because you helped us out. Now we got to continue on this other thing. Pitch in some more. You helped us. You helped this victory happen." Because if you keep losing, people are going to lose interest. But if you pretend like there's a victory in there, I mean, look at Donald Trump. It's classic Trump. Mm-hmm. Trump's supposed to be the most successful business guy since God created dirt, and he's failed at everything. But what does he say? "I'm a tremendous business guy. I know business. I know negotiating like nobody else does." Blah blah blah. They lie to build the mythology. The mythology fuels this belief in their followers, and then their followers give them money. That's how this works. Yeah. So they've got to have a victory. So when they lie about their own agreement, they're going to lie about the results at the end, because this is how they do it. Yeah. And they want to make more money. And the sad thing is this, and I'm not excusing any of what I'm about to say. You see grift and corruption when it comes to highways and healthcare stuff and education systems in our charter schools and things of this nature. And sometimes you're like, you know what, that's bad. Somebody should pay the price. Somebody should get prosecuted. But when they're doing it at the expense of our democracy, this isn't a couple $100,000 of taxpayer money we're talking about.
No.
This isn't a couple $1 million of taxpayers money we're talking about. We're talking about the very nature of our country. Yeah. And that's what they're willing to lie to people about so they can make a couple of bucks. It's disgusting.
Yeah, and do you think that, is it September 24th they're supposed to deliver these findings?
No, man. If I had a nickel for every time somebody asked me to make a prediction about what these guys are going to do or not, I'd be a wealthy man. There's no way to know. There's no way to tell. They've said they were going to do it, release it next Friday.
Right.
Now, one of the very interesting things about this is the word on the street here in Phoenix is that they have given a draft of some sort to the Senate's lawyers, and that there's a team of people looking it over, basically jimmying up the report or doing stuff to the report because there's certain things they don't want to release. There's certain things that the word is that there's certain things they don't want people to know about, or they want to emphasize, they want to frame differently than what the Cyber Ninjas submitted. And then the Senate will release its report.
Oh, well, they should hire Bill Barr to come in and characterize the findings of the investigation. I mean, he's real good at that.
Well, I'll tell you, it wouldn't surprise me if you hear his name by the end of next week. But look, they know there's nothing wrong with the numbers. Okay? There can't be anything wrong with the numbers. Not even they count that poorly. Okay? They know there's not going to be any significant or statistically significant deviation in any of the numbers, right? Hand counts never work the same as machine counts because of human error.
Right.
And so it's not going to be perfect, but the numbers are not going to raise any significant issues. The question that a lot of people are looking at right now is, well, how could anybody have injected any ballots into this thing because of the more than 10,000 different kinds of ballot styles that Maricopa County had in the 2020 election? And my answer is, yeah, it would be almost impossible to inject enough to make any sort of a difference in our elections because this jurisdiction is so big. Moreover, we've got the cast vote record and they had the cast vote record. So as far as the specifics on numbers and those sorts of things, numbers of ballots, numbers of ballot styles, blah, 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 that stuff isn't going to be a problem. What they're going to come after is policy and procedure. They're going to come after the mushy stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
They're going to come after the things that they can reframe, they can kind of characterize in odd ways. They're going to come after some of the things that folks aren't familiar with.
Yeah, that was exactly my thought, is they would just come out with muddy findings that they could continue to grift off of and probably redact the actual numbers to say, that's personal private information. We can't share that. But, yeah, and kind of go for those gray areas, keeping the waters muddied,
Absolutely. And that's ultimately their goal. And they're going to lie.
Yeah.
You know they're going to lie because they've lied already. So we cannot depend on anything that's going to come out of this from any from any of these folks as anything that's going to have any credibility. And let me tell you why I'm very confident about that. The county itself, from under the authority of the Board of Supervisors, has already put out a significant amount of information. And when I say significant, I mean a lot of information regarding the way the election operates and why this audit is garbage. The Secretary of State, Democrat Katie Hobbs, she has put, and they're a 4-1 Republican board, by the way. A Democratic Secretary of State, Katie Hobbs, has put out a significant amount of information about this, why what they're doing is not dependable and not relatable. And the other person who put something out about this has come through an evolution on this thing. Now, he's a very interesting character and particularly interesting to me because he's my successor in this office. The new Maricopa County Recorder, Stephen Richard, back at this time of the year, a year ago, was trashing me, trashing the system, saying how corrupt this was and how terrible that was because he wasn't in the office. He was running to become the county recorder against me. And they did all of the things that they do. He attacked me personally. He went after my family. He went after my friends. He was a pretty horrible political candidate. And that having been said, he ended up winning. Okay, I was kind of busy. And I'll take responsibility for the political part of it. But here's what ended up happening. If you watch his statements and the things that he said, once he got elected, his tone changed a little. Mm-hmm. And then he started familiarizing himself with the system. His tone changed a little more. And then once he got embedded in the system, learned about the career professionals in there, listened to them, and figured out what was going on, he himself put out a several dozen-page long report not too long ago about why it is that this is one of the best systems in the country and why it is that the cyber ninjas are full of shit.
Yeah, we read pieces of it.
And so that, to me, is really one of the most interesting developments through this whole thing, where he has become one of the biggest cheerleaders for me and the work that I did. Now, he won't use my name because it doesn't do him any good politically, and that's fine. This is American politics. It's a blood sport. I don't really care. I'm on to bigger and better things. And I'd love, frankly, to work with him as Arizona's next Secretary of State, because he's not a dumb guy. He's a fierce political opponent, and I will respect that in spite of the things he said about me. But I also respect the fact that he evolved into understanding how great this system is. And let me say one more thing about the system before we move to your next question. Maricopa County's 2020 election system is the single most highly scrutinized election in the history of this republic. And I would say perhaps in the history of any election anybody's ever held. And here's why. We didn't just do our own hand count audit. We didn't just have the Board of Supervisors do their own 2 audits. We've had non-government organizations from around the world. We've had bipartisan policy institutes in the United States. We've had partisan policy institutes, or left-leaning or right-leaning policy institutes looking at this. We've had the Department of Justice looking at our election system. We've had the Election Assistance Commission looking at our election system. We've had folks like the Brennan Center and the Election Center, all kinds of folks looking at this system, digging deeply into our processes and procedures. We've had, and that's not to count all of the litigation, all of the court cases, all of the rest of it, and not one single entity other than the cyber ninjas, not one single entity has indicated that there was anything wrong with this system. In fact, many of them are out there extolling the virtues of the system. And there's a lot of jurisdictions around the country who are looking at our system, the one that I built, to try to copy a lot of the different bits and pieces that'll fit within their statutes. That's one of the greatest compliments a guy could ever have for the rest of his life. Right?
I was going to say that has to feel good. And those are the kinds of best practices we should be sharing with other states, not what Cyber Ninjas is doing. And briefly, you mentioned the DOJ, and I want to ask you about that, but I have to take a quick break. Will you stay with me?
Absolutely.
Thanks. Everybody, we'll be right back. Everybody, welcome back. We're talking with Adrian Fontes, Democratic candidate for Secretary of State in Arizona. And before the break, you had mentioned all of these different entities looking into your processes and finding nothing wrong, including the Department of Justice. And I wanted to just briefly ask you about the Department of Justice before I change topics here. Why haven't they wrote a pretty stern warning letter to the Republican Senate there about voter intimidation, and possibly running afoul of federal election law, but they have not filed suit. Do you have any further information for us about? Have you reached out to them? Why have they gotten back to you? Why haven't they filed a lawsuit against the Cyber Ninjas here?
Well, look, if I know anything about the Department of Justice, and I worked as a CJA panel attorney against the Department of Justice for several times, I do know this. The vast majority of the folks in the various U.S. attorneys' offices and the various departmental spaces within the DOJ, they're very, very careful about what they do, for the most part. At least that's my experience. And in this area, particularly with something that is so critical and so sensitive, not just from a political perspective, but from a perpetuation of the republic perspective, and I'm not being hyperbolic here, this is real. They are going to be very, very careful before they pull the trigger on anything. Mm-hmm. And that's not to say they're even, putting any ammo in the cartridge. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, the Department of Justice is monitoring this very carefully. And I think that they are positioning themselves very, very well. And if there's anything that I know, it is that our new Attorney General is probably one of the smartest lawyers / judges that we could have. And he's a very judicious, a very contemplative sort of a person. And anything that happens is going to have to go through him. So Merrick Garland, at the end of the day, is going to make the decisions, and he will make them when he is ready. Mm-hmm. So I'm not going to pretend like I'm in their head, but I'm also not going to pretend like I'm going to push them one way or the other. They'll go when they're ready. You're confident in whatever their decision is? Yeah, I am. Look, I'm not only am I confident in whatever their decision is, I have to say, I have to be fair. I'm confident that Stephen Richer has come around. I'm confident in the 4-1 Republican Board of Supervisors that have seen these attacks. I'm confident in our voters. I'm confident in our systems because I believe in this country. I believe in our democracy. I believe in the people that make it up. And I believe that it is the single greatest system on the planet. I also believe that we've seen how weak it can be when we don't inform ourselves. If any of that wasn't true, I would have no business running for Secretary of State. If I didn't believe in this system, I wouldn't be running to promote it and perpetuate it. We have a great system. We have a great democracy. We just are understanding now that it has weaknesses, it has vulnerabilities, and those vulnerabilities are us. We are the weaknesses. We need to be strong. We need to be steadfast. We need to be informed as voters. And we need to believe in truth and real evidence. And that is a really romantic sounding perspective, but it's real. Mm-hmm. And for those of us who believe in it deeply, and it is that real for us, we've got to fight for it. And that's why I'm running for Secretary of State, because I genuinely believe that the perpetuation of this republic requires folks to understand that we have a good system, and it gets better as we move forward and we bring more people into the system, mm-hmm. versus doing what the other side wants to do and push people away from the system.
Yeah. And now let's talk about running for Secretary of State, because, you know, as you said, the overwhelming amount of scrutiny that was, you know, brought down upon the system that you created, only to turn up the fact from both sides that both Republicans and Democrats, partisan and nonpartisan, Department of Justice, et cetera, have found that it's really, truly amazing and worked beautifully, is, I think, one of the best things that could propel you into the Secretary of State position. But I was hoping you could tell us a little bit about why the Secretary of State in Arizona is so very critical, particularly in coming election years.
Well, so we'll start with the big picture. Secretaries of State in various states across the union have different roles. In some states, they are the actual election administrator. They actually do elections, or they're the actual registrar of voters. They actually own the registration rolls and are the gatekeepers for voters. In other states, like in Arizona, the Secretary of State is a chief regulator. This is the person who establishes greater policies that are to be applied by the counties who actually run elections. You see, our statute bifurcates election functions. The county recorder, which is like a clerk and recorder in some states like California, the county recorder is the registrar of voters, not the Secretary of State. And while the Help America Vote Act requires the Secretary of State to keep a list of registered voters, the actual registrar, the person who does the work and is the person who keeps the rolls, is the recorder. Some of the other functions of elections, poll worker, all the poll worker stuff, all the polling place stuff, a lot of the ballot stuff, by statute, all of that belongs to the Board of Supervisors, who are effectively the county election board. They appoint an election director. That's how the statute is built. Mm-hmm. Okay. And there's 15 counties in Arizona. The Secretary of State is the person who operates adjacent to the counties and really functions as a resource, as a help, and as a regulator. So the Secretary of State, before every election, will travel the entire state and make sure that all of the tabulation machines go through what's called a logic and accuracy test. They will take pre-marked ballots specific to the county with an understanding of exactly what those ballots show, and they will test the tabulation equipment to make sure that you're getting the right numbers. Once the equipment is tested, it is sealed and then used in the election. And oftentimes we'll go through a logic and accuracy test on the backside, just to make sure that nothing was messed with. And those sorts of things, right? The Secretary promulgates the election procedures manual. We have a set of statutes in Arizona that tells us how the counties are to operate the elections by statute. But at the same time, we have this procedures manual that takes care of a whole bunch of the other stuff so that our statutes don't get bogged down with tiny details like what the rubber band color is supposed to look like on this thing, or, you know, what the size of paper on that thing is supposed to look like, right? So these are important pieces of the puzzle so that if there's litigation at the end, we can have some process that folks can look at to make sure that the counties did what they were supposed to do. The Secretary helps make up those rules. There's other duties that the Secretary of State does as well. For example, in Arizona, we have a 13-1-1 voter registration system. 13 of the counties use the exact same voter registration system, and that is administered by, or at least the custodian of that system is the Secretary of State, because a lot of these counties are completely underfunded. They don't have the tax base, or at least the boards of supervisors don't support the county recorders to have their own voter registration system, which they should. So the Secretary of State has this system for 13 counties. Pima County, which is where centered in Tucson, and Maricopa County, which of course is the biggest by a large margin,
Mm-hmm.
have their own voter registration systems that communicate directly with that quote unquote statewide system. So it's a 13-1-in-1 system. The secretary is critically important in making sure that as we support the system, we being the counties, I still use that language, then the secretary's office makes sure that that all works well. So that's a lot of the minutia, a lot of the detail, a lot of the bits and pieces. But the secretary is also the lieutenant governor. And so in the absence of the governor, then the secretary of state is the acting governor. Mm. The secretary runs the libraries and archives, runs the state museum, does a lot of other stuff like taking care of notaries and the registry of charities for veterans, as a matter of fact, something you might be interested in.
Yes.
And so the secretary does a lot of those ministerial duties. Also, compliance with the Geneva Conventions and a lot of these other obscure, the keeper of the seal of the state of Arizona.
I know the 5 C's.
Yeah, go ahead. What are they?
Okay. On the spot. Citrus, cattle, cotton, copper, climate.
There you go.
Woo-hoo.
Right. And there's a 6th C that I'm going to be lobbying for.
Yeah.
Chimichangas, because the chimichangas were created here in Arizona, as you well know.
That is excellent, an excellent idea, and I hope that's on your platform. It's important to me. There are many other important things, though, and I want to talk for another minute before I let you go about being county recorder. How does that sort of? Some of the more obvious reasons it qualifies you to be Secretary of State, but is there anything that you want to talk about with that experience or your experience as a military veteran that qualifies you to be Secretary of State?
Well, I think what's important here is that Arizona is a purple state. We're not red anymore, and we're not going to be any shade of dark blue anytime soon. But we've got to be able to work with folks across the aisle. I've had the privilege of working with a 4-to-1 Republican Board of Supervisors, and we completely revolutionized the election system in the 2nd largest voting jurisdiction in the United States of America. And we did it in 4 short years. Yeah. And we worked together pretty well with those guys. And Arizona needs to have statewide officers who understand the state. I was born and raised down on the Mexican border in Nogales, Arizona. Mm-hmm. I was a counselor at a private high school in Cornville, Arizona, but you didn't even know. You might have known there's a Cornville.
I know Cornville, but I've never been to Cornville.
Well, you've been on the other side of Mingus Mountain to Prescott, which is where I got recruited to enlist in the Marine Corps.
Oh,
and when
okay.
I was an active duty Marine, I got stationed in Yuma, Arizona. Mm. So I was with VMA 513 in the 3rd Marine Air Wing with a Harrier squadron there. So I know Arizona well. As a matter of fact, when I left office early this year, I was the chief deputy recorder for the Pima County Recorder in Tucson, down in Wildcat Country, for several months, helping that newly elected county recorder transition into office, working to make sure that her vision got at least the beginnings of implementation across that institution, and to help move them towards a lot of the programs that she wanted to adopt down there that we had created here in Maricopa County. But more than any of that, and being certified, which is the highest qualification you can get as an election administrator, being an attorney, there's a lot of things that qualify me for this office. But I think the single most important thing that qualifies me to be Secretary of State is the fact that I'm really, really, really concerned with the fact that there are neo-fascists, seditionists, and people who want to deny folks the right to vote running against me. I mean, one of the guys running against me as a Republican was at the nation's capital on January 6th. He was there. And he is alleged to be one of the active organizers with Ali Alexander and Congressman Biggs and some of those guys. He's dangerous. One of the other Republicans running wanted to take Arizona's electoral college votes out of the will of the voters. Mm-hmm. She wanted to make the legislature appoint electors based on what the legislature wants, and taking that presidential vote away from citizens, essentially. Mm-hmm. Right? I mean, this is the kind of people that we're up against. And so, I would encourage your Arizona listeners to go to electfontes.com, because they'll be able to sign the petition to get me on the ballot. And if I could be so bold as to ask all of your listeners to consider contributing to the campaign, because we're fighting against the worst Trumpism the worst of Trumpism right here in Arizona. We're fighting against the worst of the misinformation and disinformation that's coming out of our own Arizona State Senate. And trust you me, this is going to go to other places in the country if they are at all successful. And if we're not able to get our message out, we're not able to fight hard enough, one of these kinds of people is going to end up having control over millions of Arizona votes and whether those elections get certified or not. Imagine a seditionist as Secretary of State who refuses to certify an election. Do we end up with an Arizona being an outlier in the 2024 presidential election where we don't know or we don't get electors assigned to Congress?
Yeah, we used to joke. People would be in 2020. People would be like, "Oh, but what if they just throw out the Biden electors and appoint their own electors like Trump?" And we were like, "That can't happen." I mean, imagine that. You have everybody in the state vote, and then the legislature if they want to pass a law saying it's up to the legislature and not up to the voters, go ahead, have at it, try it. And now here we are. They're trying it.
They did. They presented a piece of legislation. Luckily, one of the Republicans said no.
Whew.
Because he's going to be running for election. Luckily, we got saved by one of the Republicans. And I want to kind of, I know we're getting ready to wrap here. I want to finish on a very important note.
Yes, please.
It's not all Republicans who think like this. It's not all independents or conservatives who think like these seditionists do. There are plenty of folks in Arizona who do not like the fact that a gallows was erected outside of our Capitol and that the vice president and Nancy Pelosi were potential victims. There's a lot of Republicans out there who are real patriots. They don't run around waving flags and singing slogans. They actually read and understand the Constitution. They'll listen to people on the other side of the aisle. They'll pay attention to the fact that we're all in this together and that we are all Americans first. So let's not forget that while I may or may not end up with a primary, at the end of the day, when we elect folks, we need to elect folks who can not only are willing to work with the other side, but understand that particularly this kind of office, the Secretary of State of Arizona and every other state has to ensure that every American voter has their fundamental right upheld and that they are respected as an American voter first and a partisan second. That's critically important. And so this is the kind of candidate that I have been. That's how I acted as county recorder. And I think that's one of the reasons why we did well, is because folks are like, yeah, this guy's going to play it straight. And oh, by the way, everybody but the cyber ninjas has effectively said the same. So that's why I'm running. I'm hoping that we can get some support, not just here in the Grand Canyon State, but around the country. And I really appreciate the chance to talk a little about it.
Yeah, no problem. It's been a pleasure talking to you. Everybody in Arizona, go to electfontes.com. Contribute if you can, and if you're an Arizonan, I think you have to be an Arizonan to sign that petition to get you on the ballot. Am I correct?
Absolutely, which is one of the things that's interesting. Guess what? Arizona, you can sign a petition to get a statewide candidate on the ballot. You can sign a petition online to get a legislator on the ballot, but you cannot sign a petition to get many county officials or other ones on the ballot. They got to go out there and do it on paper. Oh, by the way, initiatives and referenda are the same. So that's one of the things I want to fix as Secretary of State. Why should only the state level politicians benefit from that online petition signature stuff when everybody else gets left out? We've got to level the playing field on that.
Good point. Thank you so much for your time today. Again, everyone, that's electfontes.com. And we will check back with you as this progresses, okay?
Always happy to come and chat with you. Take care.
All right, thanks. Everybody stick around. We'll be right back with the good news.